Welcome to Jackie's podcast, recorded live from the English Valley's History Center. It's June 21st, 2025, and we're rolling.
And today we're going to start with the acquisition of the week. This says Mahana's Furniture and Funeral Directors, Ambulance Service, North English, Iowa, phone 184, Appliances, Televisions, J.B. Ross, Manager. And this came from Mark Claypool from Sigourney, who's also here to watch us today. Hello, my name is Jackie Geringer McDermott, and we're recording live from the English Valley's History Center in North English, Iowa. This diary was written by my great-great-aunt, Mary Elizabeth Claypool Wade, who was known as Libby Wade. She is 75 years old in May of 1950, and here's a picture of Aunt Lib. We will read and talk about a week in the diary, and then switch to happenings around the History Center and feature stories. May 26, 1950. It is evening now, and I haven't written any in my book today. Have been busy most of the time. Had work in the kitchen. Got dinner, and then in the afternoon we listened to the radio for a while. Mrs. Bolts was here. She was here for dinner, too. She brought some lettuce, the first I've seen this year. Hattie was in today, and also Mary R. She brought eggs and some nice radishes. Elizabeth, or Lizzie Bolts, is Libby's 86-year-old neighbor. Hattie Newberry Killian is Libby's neighbor and lodge friend who rents out rooms at her home on Boland Avenue. Mary Lovina Long Regseger, who's the child on the left on this page, is Libby's neighbor from further east on Oak Street. She has chickens that lay eggs and a large garden. When Hattie came from town, she told of Roy Wallace passing away about 4 p.m. It is sad for them to give him up, but he has suffered for so long. On this date, 11 years ago, David Leroy died. Makes it extra sad time for them. Phyllis is getting along pretty well, I think. Roy Wallace was a longtime friend and the father of daughter-in-law Lena Wade. David Leroy Wallace was and here's a picture of him with his brothers and sisters too. David Leroy Wallace was the grandson of Lib and also the grandson of Roy and Stella Wallace. David, the son of Mike and Lena Wade, had died tragically in an accident at the age of 2 at their home. He was in age between the girls, Judy and Phyllis. And Phyllis, as you remember, is recuperating from her appendectomy. Mr. Will Morris also died today at the Iowa City Hospital. The young man Fowler's funeral was today also. He was killed in a plane accident. He was studying for the ministry. Ernie Claypool planted my dahlias and some beets and radishes and tomatoes. A few other things. Harwood Hogendorn is to be our paper boy now. Ernie is quitting. Will Morris was an elderly gentleman from town who was married to her friend from Lodge, Isabel Gibbons Morris. Ivan Fowler, that was killed in the plane crash near Chicago, was the son of Mr. and Mrs. Harry Fowler. His services were at the Delta Methodist Church, and he was buried in Tioga Cemetery. Ernie Claypool was 12 years old, and he's right here in this picture. He was the great-grandson of Lib's cousin Wallace Claypool. His grandpa was Bert, and his dad was Kenneth. Ernie later in life lived in Watchere. And that picture was from the North English 150 yearbook. David, or Harwood Hogendorn, he's right there, was the son of Carl and Battilla Hogendorn, who owned the local newspaper. But he's going to be their newspaper carrier for the Cedar Rapids paper. The evangelistic meetings are getting more interesting from what I've heard. Karen said that Suzanne has the measles. 17-year-old Tommy Ellis pled guilty today of murder in the 2nd degree and was sentenced to 50 years in Fort Madison and then taken there to begin serving time. His trial was in Des Moines. Libby must have gotten that news about the murderer from the radio news reports. The local Methodist Church has been having a series of evangelistic meetings. I figured out who Karen is that said that Suzanne has the measles, actually because I read ahead and Lib gave me her last name. Karen Lawrence was her name, and she was Jenny Wade's niece. She and her sister Janet Lawrence have been in town this summer as their mother Dolores, Jenny's sister, is moving. They have been to Bible school, and they have stayed with Bud and Frida Wade, too. May 27th, 1950. Poppy Day. Some girls were here. I got one. This is the anniversary of Henry and Daisy's wedding in 1891. Dr. Schulenthaler took my plate with him this morning. Russell is getting things ready for his trip to Minnesota. Expects to get started sometime today. It is cloudy and cold again today. The temperature last night, 44 degrees at Mason City. Was 58 degrees here at 8:30 a.m. I lit the oil burner. Tudor, who works for Eldon Berkram, brought some petunia plants. They are purple. I wanted pink ones, but they couldn't get them. Russell came home about 10:15 and got ready to start to Minnesota on a fishing trip. Richard Cheney and Rex and Larry King are going with him. They expect to go to Millie Luck's, which is north of Minneapolis. Henry and Daisy Moll Claypool were her brother and his wife. They've both now passed on, but Libby likes to remember birthdays and anniversaries. Dr. A.C. Schulenthaler lived about 2 blocks north of Libby, and likely he stopped as he walked to work downtown to get Libby's denture and take it to work on it. Russell, or Taller Wade, is her 42-year-old son, and he lives with her in the house. And Eldon and Opal Ballard Berkram now own the grocery store, and their employee, Mr. Tudor, delivered some petunia plants that Libby had ordered. Jenny was here. She is getting money from neighbors for flowers for Roy's funeral. I talked to Evelyn. She said Suzanne is broke out good with measles, and Kathy is covered with chickenpox. They are surely having a bad time. Just last Monday, Suzanne's tonsils were taken out. Her throat didn't bother her, Evelyn said. I received a letter from Anna and Verl's picture, like the one that was taken for their school annual. It is very nice. He has changed some since I saw him, but he is that age. Will be 18 next month. Jenny Wade is Lib's daughter-in-law, and she's right here in the picture. She's married to her oldest son, Wayne, or Perky Wade. Elizabeth Wade Kurtz is her daughter, and Evelyn Wade Kurtz is her daughter, and she's right here in the picture. And her children are 7-year-old Suzanne and 2-year-old Kathy. Here's another picture of Evelyn that I found. This is their high school pictures, and where I found those was on those composites that people have been bringing in here. And here's Suzanne. And here's Kathy. Burl Cray is Lib's youngest grandson, and he's just 18 years old, and he lives in Texas with his parents. And his parents are right here, and that's Anna, who's Lib's daughter, and her husband, Richard Cray. Mrs. Boltz came in the p.m. She went to town from here. Bertha came. She had brought her groceries and then came here. Marvin came for her. He had a pretty ring that I suspect will be a graduation present. May mean more than that. I don't know. Bertha Claypool Geringer was Lib's niece and my paternal grandmother. Bertha could not drive a car, as many women in those days did not drive, so one of her 11 sons picked her up and took her back out to their farm in the country, northeast of town at Yankee Point, where they now lived again. My uncle Marvin Geringer is right here in the picture, is Lib's great-nephew, and he's dating Marlene Newberry, a senior in high school. Marlene is Hattie's niece and the granddaughter of her late friend, Clara Newberry. We heard that Roy's funeral will be Monday at 2 p.m. at the Christian Church. Mr. Will Morris's funeral is to be tomorrow at 2 p.m. at the Methodist Church. Bertha said Glenn's were out from Iowa City yesterday. He is some better. He goes to Des Moines for to the Veterans Hospital for treatment. My Uncle Glenn Geringer, who is the sailor in the picture, now lives in Iowa City with his wife Mamie and their 3 boys, Dale, Larry, and Joe. Keith is very bad again. More hemorrhages and was so weak. He is now in Cedar Rapids Hospital. Had blood transfusions. It is rainy and cold. The temperature at Des Moines at 6 p.m. was 62 degrees. Keith Geringer is my dad's first cousin on the Geringer side. He has something very wrong internally. He was married to Lois Hinder Geringer, and they have a little girl named Phyllis. Dorothy Geringer brought Donna here to stay while she went to the show. She was good company, but after a little while was a little restless. Later, after Dorothy had come and took her uptown, Judy and Sandra and Kay were here a few minutes. Phyllis is uptown, Judy said. Donna Geringer is the 4-year-old daughter of my uncle and aunt, Donald and Dorothy Geringer. Here's a picture of her and Mrs. Cram. A shout out to my new listener, Connie Jordan. Is this your grandmother Cram in this picture? Lib's youngest daughter is 9-year-old Judy Wade, and she has arrived with her cousin Sandra Hahn, who was later Sandra Shetler, and Kay Williams, to report that her older sister Phyllis is uptown, so she evidently recovered enough from her appendectomy to be out and around. May 28, 1950. Another cold, cloudy day. Prediction on radio is continued for another several days, as it is today, with some showers. I was alone until about 11. Frida came and brought a piece of raspberry pie for me. Mrs. Bolts came up and we ate dinner together, had soup, etc., and pie. Karen broke out with the chicken pox, and the children were all exposed, and to measles too. Warren stopped to see if I wanted to go down to Roy's, but I thought I would wait until tomorrow, and maybe I can go then. Frida Wade is married to Lib's grandson, Walter or Bud Wade. Warren is her second son, and he's on this side of the picture. And he wanted to know if Lib wanted to go down to the Wallace home to visit. Emma McCarter Zilmer was here a few minutes this p.m. She had been over to Minnie's. I hadn't seen her for years, but I knew her when I saw her out on the walk. She hasn't changed very much. Mrs. Kinnaman stopped for a while in the evening. Walter and Jimmy were here a while. We're out for a walk. Emma McCarter Zilmer was an old friend from the Green Valley years who stopped to see her friend Lib. She was in town to see Minnie Patterson Zilmer, the mother of Ada Evers and the grandmother of Shirley Baines. Minnie is 59 and lives with her 87-year-old father, George W. Patterson. Mrs. Kinnaman was a neighbor whose family used to own the town newspaper. Walter, or Bud Wade, is the one on the left, and he's her grandson who lives in the second house around the corner on Southeast Street. And Jim Wade, is his younger son, oldest son. May 29th, 1950. The sun shone nice in the morning, but it soon clouded over. Was cooler in the p.m. I went down to Wallace's. Didn't think I could go to the church, so I stayed at the house. Ham Hahn took me down there, and Warren brought me home. The main reason that Lib cannot go to the churches for the services is that there are steep steps in both the Christian and Methodist churches. Both now have ramps, but it was not like that in 1950. Ham, or Irvin Hahn, is Lena's brother-in-law. The Wallace family gathered at the Wallace home to greet friends. Several were there that I hadn't seen for a long time. Edith Brubaker was one. She came with Oscar and his wife. It had been years since I saw her, and I used to know her so well. She looked so frail. Edith Pettibone Brubaker was originally from the Yankee Point area, and in 1950 she lived in Grinnell. She was related to me through the Carter family, as she was the granddaughter of a pioneer family, Franklin Pettibone and Armilla Carter Pettibone. Her parents were Byron Pettibone and Ellen Warner. After her parents both died when she was very young, she was raised by the Warner family. She arrived today with Mr. and Mrs. Oscar Brubaker. They had a nice casket, metal, I think, a sort of a bronze color, and so many pretty flowers. Their children were all there. Bernie came from New Mexico, and Armand from Washington State. Both will leave next Friday. John and Ethel couldn't come. Ethel broke her hip at Christmas time and is in a wheelchair most of the time. John lives in Dakota, was here last winter. Bernie and Armand Wallace are Lena's brothers from out of state. And John and Ethel Wallace are her aunt and uncle. And they're in this picture right here. John is here. And Ethel is there. And of course, we said that Roy's the one that passed away. And his brother, Frank Wallace, was my step-great-grandpa. And their other brother was William, and he's already passed away, too. Lena had a bad headache. Maybe a good rest will help. Phyllis was there. Just a week ago today, she was operated on for appendicitis. Frida brought me a piece of rhubarb cream pie. Very good. She said Jimmy has broke out with chicken pox today. Karen had them too, but is up and out. She shouldn't be in this cold, damp weather. Hattie was here. She's very busy with WSCS, which is a Methodist social group, just now. Janet Lawrence was here a while. She had gone with Jenny to the cemetery at Joetown, and I think Wellman. May 30th, 1950, Decoration Day. It is cloudy this morning, but it looks like it will clear off. I hope it don't rain. It rained a little in the night. Temperature 62 degrees at 9 o'clock. 34 degrees the low last night. I heard the first wren this morning. Mary Newhouse stopped in a while. We could hear the band, and I guess it will be all for me today in the way of celebrating. Mary Newhouse is a neighbor. The band that Libby is hearing is the high school band, playing for Decoration Day or Memorial Day services, as we now call it. The people were assembled on the corner of Main Street and Clark Street by the drugstore, which was only a block away from Lib's house by the line of sight, but would be blocked by all the downtown buildings. The marshal of the day was Owen Voss. There's a picture of him when he was younger. It was a nice little program, and then the children were encouraged to bring flowers, and the group marched to the auditorium at the school for the rest of the program, and then out to the cemetery to lay flowers on the graves. Hazel and Shirley Barnes stopped to see me. They brought some things that were Esther's, a robe and bedroom slippers. Kind and thoughtful of them. Hazel said she thought I'd like them, and they wanted me to have something of hers. Hazel Barnes Moore and her husband Frank Shirley Barnes, who did indeed go by the name of Shirley, and also named his daughter Shirley, were neighbors, and they brought her a robe and slipper from her mother, Esther Moore. Esther Moore was the daughter of Edwin Carter of the original settlers at Yankee Point, so was a longtime friend of Lib's, and she'd passed away in January. Esther was married to Wallace Moore. You might remember that the original pioneer families of Yankee Point, north and east of town, were the Wallaces, the Moores, the Carters, the Claypools, and the Pettibones. So Wallace was the first name that was very popular among these area descendants. There was Wallace Moore and his son Wallace Moore Jr., and Wallace Claypool, and Wallace Carter and his son Wallace Carter Jr. that I know about. At about 4 o'clock, Blanche and Henry Milo came. They had been to Iowa City at Glenn's and stayed last night. Went to Joetown to the cemetery today. Glenn's daughter is about to graduate from high school a week from Friday. They are coming down for that. She won a scholarship and expects to go to Cedar Falls next September. It rained hard at Wellman as they were coming. No rain here. Hattie came over and had supper and spent the evening. Harold and Barbara were here a while. Walter has the chicken pox too. Jimmy has them, and Karen. Blanche and Henry Milo were relatives to her husband, Bert Wade. Blanche was his niece, the daughter of his sister Martha Wade. They live at McCallsburg, Iowa, and Glenn Milo is their son. Grandson Harold, or Stub Wade, he's right here in the picture, and his daughter Barbara came to visit. And they reported that his adult brother, Walter or Bud Wade, also has the chicken pox, along with son Jim Wade and cousin Karen Lawrence. Jenny's cousin, Jimmy Miller, came for a visit. His wife also, and I don't know who else. May 31st, 1950. The sun is bright, but the wind is cold. It was less than 28 degrees here in the house, so I lit the oil burner for a while. Russell got home last night about 11. He brought some fish, bullheads. They were partly clean, so I finished them this morning. They had a nice time. Stopped on the way at Olin's up north of Austin, Minnesota. He has a little store and an oil station and a lot of chickens. They also stopped at Lester Henkel's a while near Vinton. We had fish for dinner. Several visitors in the PM. Ora MD and Sarah Popham, Stella, Beth, Mrs. Huff to set out my plants in the porch boxes, Millie Kay, Jimmy and the little girls, Suzanne, Karen, and Claudia. They came when we were eating supper. We had a small melon and they liked it too. Evelyn came up later. She brought some homemade buns. I gave her a Mexican picnic hamper. We had two. Had Texas fruit in them. I sent Belva a birthday card. Russell took some fish out to Reese's. Olin Mall is in this picture. He's Lib's nephew, the son of her sister, Sarah Myrtle Claypool Mall, and he lives in Minnesota. Lester Henkel was from Vinton, and he was a distant cousin that the family stays in contact with, so Russell stopped to see him. Ora MD is a Green Valley friend who is in the Long family. There's a picture of Ora and her husband, Chris MD. Sarah Popham was also a Green Valley friend. Stella Wallace is Lena's newly widowed mother. And Beth Holmes is right here in this picture. She was a Mall, and she is Libby's youngest niece on the Claypool side, and also a child of her sister, Sarah Myrtle Claypool Mall. And Millie, that comes over all the time, is Millie Knipfer. And Lib often receives fruit from her daughter Anna, who has orchards in Texas. Belva Wade Yoss is her oldest granddaughter. She'll be 30 years old tomorrow. Russell took fish out to the family of his girlfriend, Mildred Reese. Speaking of Russell Wade, we have found quite a few times how he let others borrow his car in 1946, as he is one of the few in town who have a new, reliable car after the war. Russell passed away unexpectedly in 1964. This picture was on the internet, and Lib's oldest great-granddaughter, Sue, had this memory. I recognized the car that was Russell Wade's and became Mick Yoss's, and the girls riding are Claudia Wade Gillette and Kathy Kurtz Rogers. These two great-granddaughters of Lib Wade were in the Miss English Valley's Queen contest in 1965. That would not be the same car, but I think it shows what good taste he had in cars. Also, when I was researching, I found out that 1965 was the year that Dr. Max and Mambo, our Cedar Rapids television celebrities, put on a show at the Creamery Picnic, which we called the Town Celebration. I would have been 10 years old that summer. The English Valley's History Center has been operating on Main Street in North English since 2006. The center operates a museum, monthly program, and a community coffee shop, and provides meeting spaces for groups and organizations. These include family and class reunions, celebrations, gatherings, and club meetings. The History Center offers all of its services by donations only. It does not have annual memberships like many other historical organizations, and relies largely on private and community donations. It is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and donations are tax deductible. Your support of the History Center would help continue its operations and provide a valuable community asset. Please send donations to the English Valley's History Center, P.O. Box 70, North English, Iowa 52316. I'm going to finish reading today from the memories of Lecil Miller from the early 1910s when they lived on a farm just south of North English. And here's a picture of that farm. Dad always raised watermelons and muskmelons and also a few peanuts. The peanuts were planted in the field where the soil was sandy. He raised pie pumpkins and used for making pies. We raised wagon loads of field pumpkins, which we fed to the hogs for the protein that hogs needed. For entertainment, the school kids in those days had their ice skating and coasting parties, spelling bees, and box socials. In the summer, we made stilts, which we would put up in the air 12 to 15 feet when we walked around on them. We went swimming in the pond almost every night in the summertime. We usually had about 75 acres to plant with corn. Dad always plowed all of it with a 16-inch sulky plow pulled by 3 horses. We always plowed about 20 acres of sod with a 14-inch walking plow with 3 horses to pull it. It took a long time to get all this plowing done. We could always tell when it was noon by looking at the sun, the time when it's highest in the sky. We went by the Lord's time, not by a crackpot's time, daylight savings time. We had one horse that could just tell by the sun when it was about time to quit work. She would hold her head to one side and look at the sun and never missed it very much. In those days, we would never be finished husking corn until Thanksgiving or later. All the corn had to be husked by hand, and of course there were no elevators for unloading. We had to unload all of it with a scoop shovel. To husk corn, we never used bangborns. We put 2 people on each side of the wagon to husk the corn, and one would take the corn row. We always put a muzzle on the horses so they would not eat too much corn. We always left the corn stalk standing for feed for the stock cattle to eat in the wintertime. I'm going to stop right there for this week, and we'll go on with this another time. And today we have another story from Jane Andrews Heddon. It's a short story, and it's called Flutes. Flutes. Flutes, Mr. Brainerd said, the band director at North English High School. Are you two ready to play? The room became silent. All the other band members looked at us as Mr. Brainerd continued. This is really annoying. You seem to find talking more inviting than playing. We're here to practice, not have a gab fest. Now will you join the band and get down to the business of playing this march? My best friend Marlene Rogers and I were once again chagrined. We sat side by side just under the band director's left hand, playing first and second chair flutes in the high school band. As usual, we found more interesting talking than playing our instruments. It is no surprise that we weren't very good flutists. Neither of us spent much time practicing those long silver instruments outside of the scheduled band practices. However, we did enjoy playing in the band. Practices in the small town music room gave us a great opportunity to visit, as we seldom were in the same classes. Marlene was a year ahead of me in school, but we were about the same age and had been friends since we were 7 years old. So visit we did, despite Mr. Brainerd's daily objections. It seemed we never ran out of topics to discuss. This in turn made the flute section one of the weakest parts of our high school band. Marlene and I were the only flutes in concert band and marching band during the years 1953 to 1956. After she graduated, a freshman girl replaced her as second chair flute. Band was never as much fun again. Correspondence. Okay, sometimes I make a mistake. My brother Lou, who attends most of my programs, noted that Charles or Beanie Cox was not working in his produce store uptown in 1950, as he did not own it yet. He worked for Frank Allen at the drugstore in those days and bought Cox's produce in 1959. Here is a short article from the 150-year history book. The picture is before World War II because John Coakley, who was killed in the war, is in the picture also. Alice Floring Stramer said, another great podcast of the diary. Plus, I really am surprised about all your relatives from North English. My parents, Riley and Vivian Floring, used to mention the names of many of whom you mentioned at the dinner table. Dad used to coon hunt and interacted with many of these folks. We Floring girls used to attend school with many of the offspring relatives. Mark Claypool said, Jackie, I don't know how you do it, but each week is another amazing adventure in history. Thanks again. I heard from my distant Claypool cousin from out of state, who is the son of Evelyn Cora Claypool Osweiler. I said her name wrong last week. They plan to be in North English the same week I will be gone in July on vacation. I also heard from a Claypool cousin that I had never met from Mountain Home, Arkansas, and she's here visiting today, Shirley Claypool Cochran. Sharon White also said, "Good job, Jackie. I had Mrs. Hurst for 4 years. I also had her for a neighbor and her mother. She was a good teacher and a neighbor. I also know more about the Claypools now." Mary Wade said, "Hello, Jackie. I enjoy your Saturday morning podcast. Good job." She is the daughter of Marion Long Wade, who I mentioned last week. However, she was not the one getting her tonsils out in 1950 because she wasn't born yet then. And Alice Stramer said, "The response to the June 30th gathering of alumni at 11:30 at Bryant's at the Williamsburg Mall has been great. As of last Saturday, 20 are signed up for seats. Please continue to let Linda Holden Carter and Alice Floring Stramer know so that we can accommodate everybody." Mary Wade from Cedar Rapids also came down here this week to visit at the History Center. She brought a family history book that her sister Margaret Louise or Mickey Wade put together. Margaret Louise was named for her grandmothers. Margaret or Maggie was her grandmother Wade, and Louise was her grandmother Louise Claypool Long, Libby's niece. Mary said that her sister Margaret Louise or Mickey Long was the one who had her tonsils out, and she was also 7 years old, the same age as Sue Kurtz, Lib's oldest granddaughter, who had her tonsils out that week. Mary also told me about a story about when her sister was teething and she cried for 2 days. Her mom took her to old Doc Miller, and he took out an instrument and made a slit in her gum so the tooth could get through, and she was immediately quieted. Mary would be the same relation to Aunt Lib as I am, a great-great-niece. And Shirley Claypool Cochran is a great-great-niece. And her great-great-nephew, Mark Claypool from Sigourney, is here today in the audience. And also Winston Claypool, her great-nephew from North English. Our sympathies today to the family of Our sympathies today to the family of Brad Allison from Kinross, who died this week. And we also have just learned of the passing of Earl Hall from Millersburg. Earl was always very interested in the Hinkletown projects and history. And his picture's in the Hinkletown book. There's a really good one right here of him on a sled. It's hard to hold up this way, but there it is. We're hosting another educational program at the History Center we think you might enjoy. Sandra Kessler, host, an accomplished researcher and author, will be discussing Iowa's one-room schools. She'll be explaining the history of our highly praised system of 12,623 rural schools in Iowa from 1856 to 1966. Sandra will be speaking at the English Valley History Center on Sunday, June 29th at 2 p.m. We are also interested in learning about any historical English Valley's items that you might wish to donate to the History Center. Please contact Dave Jackson, Scott Romine, or any board member to donate. Thank you very much.